Hi, thanks for joining me today. I'm Alyssa Grimshaw, one of the biomedical research and education librarians here at the Harvey Cushing John Hay Whitney Medical Library. This short session is part of our What's the Difference series on evidence synthesis methodology. This session compares evidence synthesis approaches and narrative reviews, two ways researchers summarize literature that are often confused but serve very different purposes. Understanding the distinction between these two review types helps researchers choose the right approach and interpret published reviews more critically. This session focuses on recognizing the differences in purpose, structure, and rigor, rather than teaching how to conduct either review in detail. We'll discuss how to define evidence synthesis versus narrative reviews, identify methodological differences between the two approaches, recognize the strengths and limitations of each review type, and determine when each approach may be most appropriate. Whenever we're discussing evidence synthesis, I just like to quickly mention the availability of librarians to collaborate with you on these projects. Please feel free to reach out to us or check out our website to learn more about our services. We do also offer tools available to assist in your evidence synthesis or literature review projects. EndNote is available for download in the Yale Software Library, and Covidence is available through the library. To access Covidence, please reach out to me or your librarian. What is an evidence synthesis? Evidence synthesis is an umbrella term describing review methods that use explicit structured methodology. These approaches aim to minimize bias through predefined protocols, systematic searching, transparent study selection, and documented synthesis methods. The goal is to produce findings that are reproducible and reliable for research, policy, or clinical decision making. Types of evidence synthesis reviews you may have heard of in the past could be systematic reviews or meta-analyses, scoping reviews or umbrella reviews, and rapid reviews. And what is a narrative review? Narrative reviews are sometimes called traditional literature reviews. They provide an overview of a topic, but they do not typically follow a predefined or reproducible search strategy. Oftentimes, you won't even see a method section in these type of reviews. Authors select literature based on relevance or expertise, allowing for broader storytelling and interpretation, but also introducing a lot of potential biases into the review. Narrative reviews are valuable for context setting and education rather than comprehensive evidence assessment. So, if we're doing a side by side comparison between evidence synthesis reviews and narrative reviews, the biggest distinction is the methodology transparency. In evidence synthesis methodology, it's aimed to reduce bias through very structured processes, while narrative reviews prioritize flexibility and interpretation. Neither is inherently better, they just serve very different purposes. So, when you're thinking about choosing the right approach, evidence synthesis is appropriate when decisions based on a complete and transparent assessment of the evidence is important. Narrative reviews are useful when the readers need orientation to a topic or a scholarly perspective rather than an exhaustive evidence evaluation. One thing here to note, it can be more challenging to publish a narrative review. Many journals do not accept uninvited submission for this review type, so definitely look at your target journal and their author submission guidelines before starting. One thing I'll mention is this is a slight oversimplification of the concepts to establish a baseline foundation between these terms. Sometimes the lines are blurred between evidence synthesis reviews and more narrative reviews. I would recommend that you look at this more as a spectrum with reviews of all type throughout the spectrum, with systematic review and meta-analyses on one side of the spectrum, and publications that label themselves as literature reviews with no methodology on the other side of the spectrum. The reviews in the middle, such as state-of-the-art reviews and rapid reviews, they might provide a little bit more methods with varying degrees of rigor depending on the review type. Generally, though, I would say an evidence synthesis review needs to have a a methodology section, a reproducible search strategy. You're synthesizing in a little bit of a different way. We often see in narrative reviews where typically it looks more like, this paper where you're citing it says this, whereas the goal in an evidence synthesis review paper is you're focused less on that describing one individual paper at a time, and you're instead synthesizing topics across all of your included studies. So instead of the paper being written kind of in that this person said this and this was their finding, it's more written in the this was the finding that we found, and then you're citing all of the included studies that back up the data of that finding. So it is written a little differently, and so they're very different, but I just wanted to touch upon the fact that, it can also be seen more as a spectrum than a versus. Okay, so if we're going to talk about our key takeaways, evidence synthesis focuses on methodological rigor and reproducibility, while narrative reviews emphasize interpretation and scholarly discussion. Choosing between them depends on whether the goal is to evaluate evidence systematically or tell the story of a field. One way I like to think about evidence synthesis versus narrative reviews is through food. Evidence synthesis is more like baking. You're following a specific recipe with defined steps, and there's little room for adjustment if you want a reliable outcome. Narrative reviews, on the other hand, are more like cooking from a recipe. You can add a pinch of this or a dash of this, and you can probably still get a great taste. But the process is just way more flexible and significantly less structured. If you're interested in learning more about review types, I would recommend these two papers. The Grant Booth paper is a bit dated, so some of the information within their table is not as accurate as it once was, but it provides a great foundation of all of the 14 review types that are described. This paper was updated in this Sutton paper, where it changes the review types to review families, because you'll see that there is now a significantly more than 12 review types for you to choose from. It's significantly more updated, but it's very much more complicated. So I would definitely recommend reading the Grant paper first to understand the foundation before hopping into the Sutton paper. The other resource I love to recommend to people is the What Review is Right for You interactive tool, which can be really, really helpful. It asks you a series of questions, and then based on your answers to those questions, it provides recommendations on what review would be best for your study. If you have any questions at all about these two review types, please feel free to reach out to me or to reach out to your research and education librarian. We'd love to hear from you.